This week, HP is debuting some new devices for the enterprise. Firemon has announced support for some new stuff. The Bit Defenders are defending the bits from the defenders from the on the home network defending bits. Bit Defender.
Just move on.
Bit Defender. Landesk gets bought, and every single security vendor on the planet has either recapped 2016, made predictions for 2017, or both, which is interesting but not really. And Nginx gained some traction. All that and more. Oh, and the more is cyber insurance will be our topic, and we'll bring on a special guest who you will recognize on the show to talk about cyber insurance. All that and more on this edition of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is a Security Weekly production.
This episode of Enterprise Security Weekly is brought to you by IT Pro TV, an easy, entertaining approach to online IT training. Access over 2,000 hours of up-to-date, high-quality video content live and on demand via Chromecast, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, PC, or your mobile device. IT Pro TV's premium membership grants access to all courses, transcripts, virtual machine labs, and transcender practice exams. Corporate and group pricing are available. For a free 7-day trial and 30% off the life of your account, visit itpro.tv/enterprise security and use the code ES30. Are you worried about PCI compliance? Does your development team understand or care about security? Are you ready to face a breach of your customers' sensitive data? See the worst that can happen before it does. Black Hills Information Security can help you help management see the future. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a web application penetration test can mitigate the risk before you go live. Tenable Network Security, creators of Nessus, the world's best vulnerability scanner. Jumpstart your security program today and evaluate Security Center CV, the continuous security monitoring solution. For more information, visit them on the web at tenable.com. Pony Express, check out their line of penetration testing devices, including the Pwn Pad, the Pwn Phone, and the Pwn Pro. For enterprises, there's Pwn Pulse, providing continuous visibility into wired, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth spectrums across all physical locations, including remote sites and branch offices. For all those hard-to-reach places, there's Pony Express. Visit them on the web at ponyexpress.com.
Welcome, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly, episode 28. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. On the lines via Skype is none other than John Strand. Welcome, John.
Hello, everybody. Coming at you from the headquarters of Black Hills Information Security in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Rapid City. Nice.
Yeah.
I think of it as like a scene from those Western movies where they walk through the double doors and they always have a shootout. Westerns were kind of the same thing. Like anytime you're in a restaurant in a kung fu movie, there's a fight scene. Mm-hmm. Anytime in a Western movie that they're in a bar, there's a shootout.
Yeah, and that's more like my house, but yeah, still the same general location.
Excellent. Mr. Michael Santarcangelo is joining us today. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. No better way to start the new year.
That's right. We're going to be talking about cyber insurance in our next segment, which I always summed up in one sentence. Apparently, there's more to it than that, which is...
We're going to try to fill some space.
That's good. I've got some... do I have an announcement? IT Pro TV. Yes, very important. IT Pro TV is introducing a new membership level on February 1st. All current premium members as of February 1st will be granted the highest membership level available. So make sure you sign up today at itpro.tv/enterprise security and use the code ES30. Alrighty. HP is debuting some new devices in Las Vegas at CES, which I thought was interesting for our enterprise listeners. As people get new devices, those come with obviously security concerns. They are debuting an HP Spectre X360, which is like a tablet style kind of laptop looking thing, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Did you guys go ahead, John?
I've been hearing a lot about the CES show, and it sounds like it's more and more of the Internet of Things, and it's really, really, really bothering me because I feel like we haven't gotten computer security even remotely close to fixed with standard notebook computers or tablets or mobile devices or anything like that. And it just looks like we're on the precipice of this huge explosion of things that we don't look at as operating systems. We don't look at things that need to be patched or upgraded. And I have this intense fear that it's all about to get a lot worse rather than things getting better. But there's no way we can really stop that. People are going to innovate, come out with new products. We're just going to have to learn to keep up.
Yeah, it's interesting. The other devices there, Sprout Pro, which is the second generation all-in-one PC, designed, I think, largely for commercial applications. It's got Windows 10 Pro, 2D scanning and high-precision 3D scanning, including an active pen, which is pretty awesome, for pressure-sensitive digital inking for annotation and design.
Wow, it looks really, really cool, but it also looks like something I would not use. But I could see if you're into art and things like that, or CAD, it would be just really fantastic.
Or maybe a point-of-sale system, too. I can see this being used for a point-of-sale system.
Oh, where we're buying things using the three-dimensional gloves like they did in Minority Report.
Yeah, that too. But, I mean, that's a good point, too. I think a lot of people that are doing security in enterprise be prepared now, because the people that work for your organization are likely to be like, hey, I want one of these newfangled devices. And who knows what treasure troves of security vulnerabilities all these newfangled devices with all this new functionality is going to bring.
Yeah, I'm guessing a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a safe bet.
That's always a safe bet, right? Firemon has announced future support for Checkpoint's R80 management platform. Very briefly looked into. Have you guys ever heard of or used the R80 from Checkpoint? It's like a policy management platform.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting. We got a policy management platform to manage the policy management platform.
I thought that was kind of weird, right? Like, why do you? It's like I have a turbocharger in my car, but you want to put another turbocharger to turbocharge my turbocharger.
I heard you like turbochargers.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's like with the Apple computers, you need a dongle for your dongle
right.
to get it all connected. And I don't know, Michael, I'd like to get your opinion on this because I'm definitely a propeller head, right? That's what Paul and I do predominantly, and you serve as a great counterweight for that. And it seems to me like we're seeing more and more like the idea of managing this, not technologically per se, but actually having human beings manage all of these different security products is, I know there's people that are going to flame me for saying this, it almost becomes an impossible task when you look at not just the proliferation of technologies, but the proliferation of security technologies. It's almost impossible for a standard human being to keep up.
No, I think you nailed it exactly right, and it's one of those interesting things. So if we look at how these products get developed, their customers come back and they say, "I don't even know how to manage this." They say, "Oh, I've got an idea. We're going to build a management platform, and we're going to solve all your problems." Except for they don't, because then I've got a management platform for every single thing that I have, and I'm still trying to make it make sense. And if we're really candid about it, a lot of people don't even know why they have stuff. It's dogmatic. It's because someone told them to have it, or because I'm supposed to have it. Okay, well, is it working? I don't know.
I get this pretty dashboard that I log into every day.
Or it's not alerting me, right? Or I've got so many alerts, I turned it off, I don't care anymore. Those are the things that come into it. So I'll tell you what, one of the things I ask people, when we talk about communication, a lot of people go right to, how do I communicate with other people? And one of the things we point out a lot with the security leaders we work with is you have to think about two different aspects. One is the structure of communication, and the other is how technically the solutions you're looking at are able to communicate. And so one of the basis I look at is, if I go put something else in my environment, does it, A, communicate with anything else I currently have, and B, does it make anything else I'm doing better? Does it give it better context? Does it give me a signal? Or at the human level, does this give me something I need that lets me communicate better to somebody else? If you can't answer yes to that, I'd love to see the case where that's still a good decision, but in my world, that's...
I think that's really interesting, right? Because what you're talking about is you're putting people first without sounding too touchy-feely, right? The idea, if you buy a product, does this enable a person to do their job better? Yes or no? It's a very, very simple binary decision, right? And if it does enable that person to do their job better, does it give them better data to communicate with other people in the organization to allow them to make informed decisions? Yes or no? It becomes very, very, very simple if you try to put people at the center. But the concern I have, and I don't know how you help your customers deal with this, and we talked about this on the webcast that we just finished up, is many organizations' number one goal is not enabling people, but trying to automate and remove people from an organization. And those two things seem like they're very much in conflict.
Yeah, they seem that way, and it's a paradox. They're not. Here's why they're not. It depends. I offer this thing called the 5 lenses of value. It's on my website, and we can certainly make it available to everybody. There's no mystery to it, except for this. One of the values is, do I increase the competence of my team and the capabilities of the team? And so, when I talk about, does it help you do stuff? Most of the things that we can automate away today successfully, they're pretty low value tasks. I'm happy to automate that crap away and let smart people go focus on better, smarter things, or things that really require their time. Or I talk about risk catnip a lot. Those are the things that we're good at doing. But when you really look at it and say, did that add any value to what we're trying to get accomplished? The answer is typically no, not even close. So when I look at it that way, like for example, let's look at the communication for a second. If I can take me out of the communication loop and I can present information in a context that somebody else can act on and they don't need me anymore, then A, I'm not a bottleneck, and B, I don't really need to be tied up doing that. So that's a double win. Same time, if I can free up some cycles from the stuff that we're supposed to be able to do, that's better. Now, where the conflict you just pointed out leads to is, oh, cool, I can cut headcount? Yeah, all right. Well, that's a different conversation in a different context. Frankly, as you pointed out already, so much of what, I just realized I've been doing this now for over 20 years. I'm still facing some of the same challenges that we faced 20 years ago. It's not, we got different blinky lights. We have new capabilities now. I'm actually starting to see things that we did 20 years ago that never really worked starting to have a shot now. So it's actually oddly exciting. But the whole headcount thing, that's people looking at the wrong stuff. That's a different issue that we got to probably tackle.
I do want to say, with respects to Firemon, and if you work for Firemon, you can thank me later, that this is actually a good example of some of what Michael was talking about, and John as well, that it allows the firewall administration to hopefully, and I haven't used Firemon, but I've talked to some people that have, it allows them to be more effective and efficient at pushing out firewall rules across especially large organizations that have hundreds of firewalls, to make sure that you're not making heinous mistakes, but also I think to help automate that management of your firewall so that you can go on and do other better, more interesting things than, where every time you need to add a firewall rule, look at 30 other firewall rule sets and see how it will affect them. Firemon helps with that from what they claim. So you're welcome, Firemon. We actually started the year off saying good things about a vendor. I feel it's positive energy right up until we'll get to another story, and then John will just put that to rest. But that's okay.
Let's anger a vendor. Let's move on to
Bitdefender. We were way too positive. We need to move on to Bitdefender. So Bitdefender, this is their second iteration of a device intended for the home network to, as they claim, detect hackers and malware. However, one of the primary features of the device is that it detects when default credentials are being used on your devices inside of the home network. Now, a couple things on that. One, it's likely only doing that for people from the internet, right? Because then it would need a span port in the home network to detect, I don't know, a story that I covered earlier this week about malware going on your Android phone and then pwning your router and changing your DNS settings on your router. So that blows that right out of the water. Secondly, they're making this for the home. This would be really awesome to have in the enterprise.
Well, okay. So the reason why I'm probably going to make Bitdefender uncomfortable is this is getting really, really, really super close to Tenable's patents for passive vulnerability assessment scanning, PVS, and that's it gets into a larger conversation. Once again, I'd like to get Michael's thoughts on this too, because Paul, as much as I hate to say this, I got a pretty good idea about what you think on a lot of things, and Michael usually comes in at a completely different angle, and they're just not at that point yet. And I'm wondering if they're not at that point of actually looking for vulnerabilities, even though they're kind of starting to take a step there by looking for default credentials whenever systems are communicating outbound. But this looks like it's right on that precipice of starting to watch the traffic in your environment, looking for vulnerable refrigerators, looking for vulnerable Rokus, looking for vulnerable Apple TVs. And then what happens once you cross into that realm? I mean, is that something that Tenable is going to try to defend? Because they do look at that as one of their core products. And if you have somebody like Tenable that has those types of patents, does that actually chill any technological innovation because of those patents? So it's something like reading this. I think the product sounds great. I think it's really cool. They're targeting home users. This is fantastic. It's something you want to give to your parents, your aunts, your uncles to try to better secure their environment. But I worry, is it possible for them to go that next mile and actually start looking for vulnerabilities on the inside of their network with user agent strings? Or do the patents just shut that down immediately?
Well,
all right. So
go ahead, Michael.
Here's what's pop. Well, so there's a couple things popping in my head, and I'm not sure where to start. Let's start with the Tenable side. I love intellectual property. I don't know why. It's always fascinated me, and I guess if I ever got silly and went to law school, that's probably where I'd focus. I think it'll be interesting to see. I think that's a good point. I didn't even think of that, John, until you mentioned it. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens because as I'm reading a little bit more about how they operate this. Yeah, that's going to be neat. Now, keep in mind, when you have a patent, that doesn't necessarily exclude anybody else from doing anything because it's still on you to defend that patent. So now it's going to be interesting to see, does Tenable step up? Do they reach out? Because a lot of these things, they get settled really fast, as in here, we'll pay a licensing fee. Okay, good, and it's knocked out. But also then, if Tenable has to defend this, it'll be, unless they've already defended it, I don't have that insight, but if they've already defended it, then they've got a good track record. If not, that'd be interesting because they both have money that they can spend on that. I think it'd be a distraction for both of them, but it's interesting. Now, here's my other part, and it's fascinating because I try not to be cynical, but we lived through the 90s, and if you remember the mantra of the 90s, because we're still paying for it today, it's internet bad, firewall good. And when we went to enterprises and we tried to help them understand how and why they should invest in security, that was our simple mantra. And the reason was we didn't know how to explain anything else. And so we said, well, do you got a firewall? And you go, well, I don't need a firewall. Well, you're connecting to the internet. Bad things happen on the internet. But if you have a firewall, you're good. Oh, okay. I'll buy a firewall. By the way, we didn't really explain, and you have to set the rules properly, and you probably should audit them, and, you should take logs and review the logs. And so for a long time, it was, well, I got an internet. I'm good. Thanks. I don't even want, I'm going to, I've got a firewall, rather. I'm good. Why are we going to talk to you? So I'm looking at this, and I'm kind of trying to unpack it. And so they're basically saying, okay, so there's this Internet of Things, and all your stuff is connected, and we know that and this is about the time of year where the news station is going to tell us again about some parent who freaked out because they heard somebody's voice in their kid's nursery on the two-way camera. Like I'm surprised it hasn't shown up yet. But seriously, in the next month, it's time. We're due, and that's going to come up again, and that's going to be perfect for Bitdefender to step in and say, we've got the solution. You don't want creepos looking at your kids on your internet-connected whatever, or your doorbell, or whatever else. Yep, we got the solution, and it's back to internet bad, but here, my device good. Are we going to not focus then on some of the hygiene that I guess one argument could be this is great and this is the answer, and that's how we can get around all this stuff. Or are we just going to create a bunch of people? How would you explain this? This is a geeky thing. I'm running this through my head right now to say, aside from buying it from people in my family and saying, here, I'm just going to come to your house and set it up for you. How do you explain this to somebody?
I think that it's something we have to get into, right? I don't know. We've got to somehow make it easier for home users to do this. Paul and I got flamed last summer really hard during one of our webcasts. We were talking about, I made the comment, something to the effect of computer security has all but ignored the home user. And then Paul said something, and I came back and I said, and you know what? I don't have time to worry about the home user because I'm busy with the enterprise things. And this guy came back really hard at us and said, how dare you? And he made a point. But it's a concept of triage for me. I can only focus on so much, and enterprise level customers and government customers are where I need to focus on right now. But this is a step in the right direction of trying to make it easier for home users. And imagine if it was something where a user got an email and it said, look, you need to upgrade your refrigerator. Here's some instructions on how to upgrade your refrigerator. You need to upgrade your Roku. You need to change your password. And they got easy step-by-step instructions on how to do that. I think that would actually be a product eventually that would have a place in the market. Not for everybody, but damn, it would be a step in the right direction. But it goes back to the core question. Is it possible for somebody to try to enter into the home market whenever there's so many patents trying to lock down all of these things that are all being leveraged for millions of dollars in the enterprise level? Once again, not a dig on Tenable. I believe in intellectual property and protecting intellectual property. But is it possible for a small niche vendor to start stepping into the home market whenever so many of the patents are tied up with enterprise players who have no interest in moving into the home market at all?
No, and that's a great point. And I don't know if these devices that secure your home network from your vulnerable IoT devices are necessarily what we need. It kind of goes back to our previous thing about, yo, dog, you need another IoT device to secure your IoT devices. Right. And so here's like another thing. So now the home user needs a firewall, and then they need another firewall for all of their IoT devices, or they need one much bigger firewall, which is going to be a lot more expensive, and not many people are going to buy it. And oh, by the way, if it's just alerting, what's the likelihood that home users are going to ignore the alerts? We see that in the enterprise. Michael was just talking about, you're overwhelmed with alerts, you just turn them off. So, and then how is it going to protect from every possible attack? No one could possibly.
Well, that's why you've got a subscription, right? I mean, this is the other thing. We talk about this stuff on Startup all the time. The new model is everything's got to be driven by subscription. For what it's worth, I like that model. But so just so we think about this for a second, we have a struggle getting people to buy a new router and to spend more than $60 or $70 on a router. So now I'm going to say, hey, you bought all that smart stuff in your house. Although, wait, what did we just see? Was it Samsung or LG? Somebody just had their smart TV locked up.
It was Google. It was a Google TV.
So people are going to start crying about this stuff and they go, oh, well, you could buy our thing. It's only $200 and $100 a year. But as you pointed out, what is it actually going to do? But I think John had a great point in terms of when will we see people start to do it. Look, love them or hate them, Apple's leading the way on that. Google's leading the way on that. Microsoft is catching up on that. And it's interesting to watch those three, and Amazon's in there now, I guess, kind of pushing each other on updates and auto updates and writability and everything else. I think what happened, I spent a lot of time thinking about this. It moved so fast. I used to tell people, if you ask a question and somebody looks at you kind of condescendingly and says, well, I can't explain it to you, take them at face value. Just cut off the to you. They can't explain it. We got a lot of stuff happening. It's moving fast. The landscape continues to change. So even though I commented it's the same problems for 20 years, they're the same, but they're different. And I appreciate that. And as that all shifts and changes, taking time to get our heads wrapped around it so that we actually understand the core problem that we're trying to solve and then put forth solutions that work for everybody, I think is really kind of fascinating, as in, yeah, it's a hard problem to solve. I'll tell you something that sparked my interest, and then we can get off of this. Lawn sprinkler systems. In the South, everybody has one. And invariably something goes wrong with it. In fact, we had a lightning strike this year that took out a bunch of the heads, and it was really kind of interesting. And in the process, I followed the guy around who was fixing them, and he explained to me that they're all.
Doesn't sound creepy at all.
I did it with permission, and I had the camera out. But so I mean, if you've watched me on any of these programs, I'm nonstop with questions, and but this guy was actually more talkative than I had questions. And he was explaining to me how, like 20 years ago, the industry was highly competitive. They weren't all the same voltage. They weren't all the same size tubing. They weren't all the same size heads. And they got together as an industry and said, you know what, this is going to kill us. And so now you can trade out, whether you go with Toro or you go with Rainbird or you go with Thompson or you go with somebody else. It doesn't matter. You can mix and match your whole system. It'll work great. And that's what we need to get to. We've got to get to a point where people realize that competition in business is awesome. Competition for value is awesome. But if you're trying to provide some basic utility around security, and we need to think at least at a fundamental level of security as a utility, there needs to be some level of interoperability and stuff. And so let's go back to the last thing. Every time somebody stands up their own new way of doing it, we got to knock that off. There's got to be a common structure that gets us to some baseline. And I think when we can achieve that, we're going to see remarkable gains. And at the same time, we're going to understand how to explain stuff to people. Here's the 5 things you need to know, and everybody gets them. And then a lot of these problems start to go away.
But Michael, the real question is, can you voice activate your sprinkler system?
I can't, no.
Oh, I can. Get it. Come on. I mean, that's just table stakes.
It is table stakes. That's why I don't play.
Oh my gosh.
So there's
that. Only way to win.
That's right. Proliferation of articles is interesting. It was very hard to find enterprise security news the end of 2016 and in this particular week, because no one's making any real product or integration announcements, largely because of the turnover for the new year. Everyone's busy having their sales kickoff meetings and holding back things in preparation for RSA in our industry. So that's where the stories are kind of weird. There's not too many product announcements.
But this next one that you had up, the Reuters article, this is without question the single shortest article we have ever linked to.
Yeah, I apologize. Go to landesk.com and right on their main page, they did get they sold to Clear Lake Capital Group, and they're joining forces with Heat Software, which is, this is a pretty major, and Landesk is a pretty big company. I had not heard of Heat Software before, but apparently there's some, for lack of a better word,
help desk
everyone
software,
drink synergies between these two companies, and they have in fact, I think it was a buy. I don't think it was a merger. So.
Yeah, so I just can't believe how short this was. Usually it would be like Landesk, a global leader in computer security and inventory management. And,
yes.
So I like this. This is straight to the point. It'll make our show go faster.
Okay, so here's the full one. Landesk leadership in providing software to simplify IT complexity is further strengthened by Heat's cloud-based service management (CSM) and unified endpoint management (UEM) software solutions. Just not to disappoint you, John.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad that came through.
Yeah. So I don't know if I don't
really clarified it for me. I'm in.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about with the story other than it was a light week for stories. So
all right. So I've got another one for Michael. It's cool. I don't come on regular Security Weekly all that much, just because it lines up with my kids being driven all over the place. But
I'm running the same thing these days.
Yeah. So this, I've got to get your take on this, because, all right, CIOs will thwart cybersecurity threats with behavioral analytics in 2017. I hate articles like this, because it's basically leading people down a path that makes them think that it is possible to thwart cyber risks. Something like this just doesn't help the landscape at all, and it actually, I think, makes CIOs become dumber, because they start to believe this crap. And I'd love to get your opinion on it, because you're so heavily tied into the human aspect and communications and how people look at things.
Yeah. Now, at the risk here, right? Because I write for IDG, and this is part of that family. What I'll just say categorically is these things make me throw stuff every day, for precisely that reason. It's clickbait stuff. It pulls people in, and I get it. Usually I'm privately bitching about it to somebody, because this kind of stuff drives me absolutely bonkers.
And that's exactly why I added the story in there, by the way, was not because I thought it was a good article.
This will fire up John and Michael.
Exactly.
Woo!
Yeah, exactly. Hey, well, at least he knows us. Look. Now here's the thing. Here's what I will say though. So let me pick apart then. Behavioral analytics. You know what? We're actually, that was a myth 20 years ago. We're starting to see some stuff where it could work. Cool. Now, is 2017 the year? No.
Yeah.
Just not even really going to happen. But so let me look at this then and try to parse it differently. All right. So software detects and alerts companies to anomalous behavior on CIO's purchase list for the new year when spending on cybersecurity tools is expected to increase. I don't know about you guys. I'm finding it's really kind of mixed. I'm talking to I've got some CISOs and some CIOs that say, "Oh yeah, no, I'm green lit. I can go get whatever I want." And then I've got some that are still crying that it's 18 months to figure out a new solution and get it in house, and that makes me cry. That's pure lack of leadership around the board. If you have a problem and it takes you 18 months to figure it out and get something on board to try to address it. You know what? That's just really horrible.
a lot of those organizations that we're seeing that have the much longer cycles to try to get anything moving are organizations that just got burnt very heavily, or got burnt multiple times. Like they basically tried, when it was data loss prevention, right? Everything was data loss prevention. They jumped on that bandwagon, spent a tremendous amount of money on data loss prevention. And then the threat intelligence feed bandwagon showed up and they jumped on that one. And there's one thing about this article, and I don't necessarily blame the author of this article so much for the title of this CIO IDG article, but there's something that he has further on down in the article that resonates. It says boards free up budget, but expect proof of protection. And I think that this is going to happen more and more in 2017. If somebody says we spent $500,000 on cyber threat intelligence feeds, how has that actually improved our security? Quantifiably, show us.
Bingo.
And
yep.
That's true in this. And I think that we're going to see a lot more of that. And that's why I think you're going to see a lot of budgets being pulled back, because a lot of boards are sick and tired of spending a lot of money and they're not actually seeing it be effective.
Yeah, look, we did that reactionary drumbeat. Oh, it's bad. The cybers, they're coming to get you. I need money. Okay, right? And by the way, we've been doing this for 20 years too. HIPAA came along and needed a ton of money. By the way, that we've already lived that, and now we're saying healthcare is the biggest targeted, and they've got no budgets and they don't know what they're doing. And I don't mean that the people in healthcare don't know what they're doing. What I mean is we're just overrun by it. Wait a minute. We already hit that drum. Like, you got to stop with this. This is the highlight of this article, and I absolutely love it. And by the way, I'm seeing more of this. I've started to work with some boards, and they're asking these types of questions, and they're great questions to ask, and I want to see more of it. When we do the straight talk stuff, here's the way it works, right? What's the problem you're trying to solve? You need to be able to articulate it. Are you ready to take on that solution or to address that, or do you have something more fundamental you need to do first? What's the value of doing it? Here's what I always tell everybody with value. This is not a return on investment. It's not a return on security investment. It's not a cost-benefit analysis. It's straight up, so let's use your point. If I throw $500,000 into this, frankly, in 90 days, I want to see that I got $500,000 of benefit. Measure it any way you want. Don't really care. And at the end of the year, I want to see a 3 to 5x. I mean, everybody in the world today is 10x. I got 10x everything. You show me a solid 3x, $1.5 million of benefit back to your team, you're solid. And the reason this is so important is because then the next time you go ask for something, if you can tell me what the problem is, why you're ready for it, that it's going to be valuable, you've got a track record of making good decisions, you can measure it. And keep in mind now, this is my new change for this year. Measurement isn't about anything other than protecting that value. If you did your analysis up front and you came back and said, hey man, if we put this in, right, it's going to communicate with these tools, it's going to arm our team this way, we're going to be able to do this type of protection. Here's how I'm going to make sure it's working. Here's how we're going to make those tweaks and adjustments. You're solid. Then the next time you have a need and you go and you make the case for it, you've got the bona fides. They'll let you have it. Well, I mean, provided it's a reasonable request and stuff. I think this is great. I want to see more boards asking questions. That's actually one of the things that I'm working on this year, is helping boards understand how to ask better questions and then know if they just got snowed or not in the answers.
My last story in here is nowhere near as thought-provoking as our previous article. Nginx is gaining traction on the web. I think a lot of this is due to cloud providers and just a lot of movement into the cloud. Nginx seems to be gaining some traction on Apache, and was just kind of a heads up to everyone in the enterprise that, I think a lot of people think, well, you have a web server and it's Apache and that's what we do. But Nginx is growing so much so that, I think you might not even know what your web server is in a lot of cases. For example, Cloudflare is using a customized version of Nginx, which powers 3.6 million active sites. So, anyway.
Yep. And we're definitely seeing it more and more in the test, too.
Yeah.
I read that. So what's the implication?
I think the implication is anytime we're dealing with, we'll just look at it from security, anytime we see widespread adoption of new technologies, you always wonder, a lot of people say we're switching away from Apache because maybe there were some vulnerabilities that burnt them. Maybe they were running Apache and they were running PHP on top of it and they got burnt. Or Tomcat.
It's performance too, John, right?
Yep, and performance. So anytime we have a new up-and-comer, right, it's fairly safe to assume that particular technology has not been as vetted as something like Apache or IIS. And I think for people like Paul and I, we are always one, we're excited because new technologies are shiny and that's awesome. But also at the exact same time, you start to cringe because you're seeing lots and lots of corporate customers starting to implement this technology, and you just wait for the other shoe to drop, and all of a sudden the vulnerabilities start popping up. I would say PHP would be a really good example of this. PHP takes off about 7-8 years ago, and it starts growing, and it's turned into an absolute nightmare. So much so that you have people like Dave Attell that say it's impossible for you to secure it. I think his quote is, "You should allow as many PHP web servers as you would allow pregnant women to smoke cigarettes in your organization." So we worry about that, right? So it's bright, shiny, it's new, and that's cool. Its performance is great, but then we also cringe because we're waiting for that tidal wave of security vulnerabilities that'll inevitably start coming after it starts becoming widely adopted.
That's a fantastic point.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And we're going to end this segment on a high note and take a short break and come back and talk about cyber insurance. So stay tuned.
LogRhythm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all of observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns in application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logrhythm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today. Waterfall Security Solutions, the market leader in unidirectional gateway technology. Their industrial cybersecurity technology protects critical infrastructures and control systems from remote online cyber attacks. It's installed around the world, including nuclear plants in the US and electric grids. Their unidirectional security gateway creates an impassable physical barrier preventing communications from flowing into the industrial control network, enabling safe and secure IT and OT integration, remote monitoring, and cloud services. Visit go.waterfallsecurity.com/enterprise security. The first 100 listeners who register will receive a free copy of SCADA Security, What's Broken and How to Fix It, written by Waterfall's VP of Industrial Security, Andrew Ginter. Signal Sciences is the industry's first web protection platform that works in any cloud, any container, any platform as a service, and any modern application architecture. The Signal Sciences web protection platform can be deployed in next-generation WAF, RASP, or reverse proxy modes, giving customers ultimate flexibility and coverage. Protect your web applications with Signal Sciences web protection platform. Signal Sciences, securing code and connecting teams. For more information, check them out at signalsciences.com/ESW.
Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. I want to welcome our new sponsors, both Waterfall Security and Signal Sciences. Very, very cool technology, as do all of our sponsors that support the shows. But those are our two new ones. So look forward to interviewing them and getting more information out to our listeners on those two things. Super cool technologies. So. Cyber insurance. Yay. I always thought it was like, well, yeah, that's a cop-out, right? Okay, end story.
Yeah. That's
Move on. Apparently, I think I said before, there's more to it than that.
Yeah, there's a little bit more to it. Look, here's where it all starts, and this is something that's always driven me nuts, is that we say this word insurance, and we have completely bastardized it, but it's at its fundamental level, insurance, in any capacity, is you're basically pooling risk together. So what you're trying to do is to protect yourself against something that is low probability but a high impact. So like a hurricane wiping out your house or something to that effect. That's classic insurance, and it's a great way to it's a risk transfer mechanism. You're basically taking your very narrow risk and you're transferring it out across a bigger pool on the bet that no single group in the pool is going to have the same thing happen to them at the same time. So then the people who manage that make money on it, and then the people who need it, they paid into it, and then they get some support out of it. That's the basics of insurance. And then we start to apply it to the world of cyber and security.
Gotcha. No, that's a good explanation. So, I mean, what's the value for a company to do cyber insurance? I mean, can it help in those cases, and can it help your overall security strategy? Does it strengthen your posture and security?
I'll tell you what. There's a couple interesting answers to that. The short answer is yes, and here's some of the reason why. And this may sound somewhat contradictory. So let me just say, some of what I'm going to say deals with classic insurance, not so much health insurance. But one of the things that happens with a classic insurance is that you have actuarial tables. So they go in, they look at stuff. They are fantastic at getting data and understanding what does and doesn't work. So one of the things that's happened, especially with the cyber insurance underwriters very early on, is they've been able to say, by the way, if you have a breach, if there's an incident, if there's a problem, call us. And we're going to help you mitigate that. It's in their best interest, right? Because it means it's a lower claim, if any, that they have to pay. But it's also getting them some hands-on experience and helping guide you through whatever it is. And we're still seeing that as a benefit of the premiums in a lot of cases. So yeah, absolutely. The other thing is, some of these breaches, I mean, for all we know, we don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'm leading the charge, but I'm definitely pretty clear that a breach is a symptom. It's only a symptom. Now, people always go, symptom of what? Well, I mean, look, it could be that you made bad decisions. But here's where cyber insurance is going to start to come in. There's this concept. It's not a new concept, but it's called reasonableness. It's a legal concept. We're starting to see it apply to security now. So what that means is what you did reasonable relative to somebody else just like you, right? And that's always the tough part in reasonableness. So if you're a huge company with a big budget, cool. Then what are other huge companies just like yours with a big budget doing? And are you doing the same things that they're doing? By the way, if you're not, that's okay, but why? What makes you different or special? Is it a neglect thing? Do you know what the industry is doing? Do you know how those things are working? So again, the insurance is going to start to play here because that's going to guide you on some of those things because they're actively involved across the industry. But at the same time then, what you're going to start finding is other reasonable people in your industry, in an organization of your size, are in fact getting some sort of a cyber insurance premium or a policy. And as a result of that, that becomes the reasonable course of action for it.
Michael,
the last part to it is...
I have a question just up into that point, right? Like, where are the lines where you're making a decision that, like, we're not going to do something and instead we're going to have an insurance policy for that? Because it's such a rare use case, right? I can see that maybe factoring into this discussion.
Well, those lines are starting to go away simply because insurance companies have a lot of riders. And basically, if you want to get cyber liability insurance or breach insurance or even an umbrella insurance policy, you now have to fill out a lot of forms. We fill out a ton of these forms for our insurance. I think we're up to like $10 million for anything that we do. But we have to fill out documentation that says that we do vulnerability assessment scanning on a monthly basis. We have to say that we use encryption for data at rest and data at transit. We need to, and it's not just general things like, do you run AV? No, we got to actually fill out a lot of detail for the insurance company that we have. And what's interesting for me is I'm starting to see a lot of companies that are coming to us and like, we need a pen test because our insurance policy tells us that we need to have a pen test. So I think insurance is going to move the dial in computer security far further than HIPAA or PCI or anything. So I think it's going to be a good thing in the long run.
I have been saying this for like 15 years now, and the timing wasn't right, and I've been consistent on it. And John, as you were explaining, that's exactly what happens. So when you look at it, right, maybe even 10 years ago, if you tried to get a cyber policy, with the exception of Lloyd's of London, that'll write you a policy for anything, there wasn't an option. Or let me rephrase that. That's not true, and I know a couple of the ones that did it are going to be really pissed at me right now. Okay, you had a limited set of options, but your coverage was limited, and there wasn't a ton that you could be able to do with it. Okay, so what's changed now? Well, everybody's writing for it. So that means a lot of people got burned. Once they get burned, they go, okay, hold on, that's not going to work for us. Let's go figure out what this needs to be. And so they start with easy questions. Do you have a policy? Do you have a firewall, right? But then what they've realized is those questions don't give them any detail. So now they're asking better questions. So let's go back to the story we talked about in the news. The board's going to start asking for proof. Okay, you got a budget. Are you actually improving our security posture? Are you actually protecting what matters? Well, whatever you're going to put in insurance, they're going to do it. John, have you seen yet where they're actually coming out and verifying it? Or let me ask you differently. How are they verifying that? Right now, are they just taking you at your word?
Yep, pretty much. They take us at our word. However, for our two insurance companies that we work through, because we have to have two different policies for different things, we have to actually provide all of the policies for BHIS. We have to actually submit those in and have them reviewed. And they have somebody that goes through it, reviews, and says, yep, this looks good. And they are actually reviewing it. They're not just looking at the title of the docs and moving on. They're actually looking at it, make sure it complies with best practices. Or they're at least looking at those policies. But what's more interesting is, for me, is I have heard of a couple of organizations, smaller credit unions, that have been breached, didn't do the due diligence that they were supposed to. And whenever they go to their insurance company saying, hey, we just got hit for a couple of $1 million, we'd like to call in our insurance policy, the insurance company is basically saying, great, I want to see your last pen test report. I would like to see your last IDS alerts or your incident response reports. And if they don't have those, the insurance company is basically saying, tough, we're not going to pay this out.
Yeah, and they'll win every time. Here's the thing then. So people always ask me, they say, well, what should I ask? That's the question to ask. If you're in security today and you're in the enterprise, there's things you can do. Maybe we'll get time to talk about it today. But if there's only one question you need to ask, it is this. How will we defend our choices? How will we prove to you, the insurance company, when we file a claim that we've done what we said we've done what you've asked us to do? You need to know that going into it, because if you wait until you got popped and then you went in and tried to make a claim, because, just hoping it all works out, good luck. That's and by the way, it's I've been on both sides of this. I don't think insurance companies are out to screw people. I don't. But I do think a lot of people try to abuse insurance companies, and so they've had to develop really tight controls, and they don't want to be abused. I mean, they're in the business of helping you in a time of crisis, but they're also really fundamentally in the business of making money. I'm a capitalist. I like it. I think it's a great system, but that's why they put some of these screws down. The more you know going into it, the more questions you ask up front, the better off you're going to be. Now, here's the interesting wrinkle. Most enterprises, the person who does the insurance is not a security person, right, even if they're doing cyber insurance. And I think that's where we have opportunities.
What about the kind of flip side to this, right? Like, what kind of insurance are or should enterprises expect of vendors, whether that's a professional services or whether that's a software vendor? Like, what about the other? Can you, as an enterprise, require insurance from other people as well? That's kind of like the opposite.
I think John is living proof. The answer is yes.
Yeah.
And
John always has been. We had this conversation so many years ago, too.
Well, and also the other thing that we're seeing, and we have to have a whole show dedicated to this, is basically vendor supply chain security. There's a bunch of companies out there, Security Scorecard, BitSite, that allow you to look into trying to develop some type of metrics between a computer security of an organization versus what we can enumerate from them without actually scanning them. And insurance is one of those things. And there are a number of our customers that say, before we'll do any work with you, we want to see your insurance policies. Mm-hmm. And that's not uncommon. It's actually it happens on almost a weekly basis. It's just part of doing business for what we do now.
Yep. Now, I'm going to point out something interesting, too. Not only do we have those companies looking at the security health of organizations, I've started taking some briefings, and these should start rolling out in the next couple of weeks. There are companies that look at financial health of organizations, and they have ways to look at financial health of non-publicly traded organizations as well. And I said to them, sometimes I'm not as quick on the uptake as I'd like to be. And I said, how does this play with security? And they said, if you're not well capitalized or you don't have the money, you can't afford the insurance. They won't give you insurance. Was one of their leads. And they also said, so what controls are you putting in place? Are you maintaining those controls? When you're broke, you're going to cut corners. I went, oh, that's really kind of fascinating. So that plays into the whole third-party risk. I'm looking at the way the insurance companies are evaluating their policyholders, very similar to the way that we're struggling through trying to understand third-party risk. And I'm pretty confident those two are going to merge up at some point and be a real big benefit. And all I can keep thinking about, too, is Progressive in particular. They've got that snapshot now. So if you're willing to let them plug that into your OBD2 port and pay attention to all your driving habits, they'll calibrate your actual risk. And they always tout that will save you money. Looking at the way a lot of people drive, I'd be shocked what the actual savings are. But so the reason I was asking John about how often he sees the insurance companies actually performing the diligence, I think we're going to see that, right? So even though I don't want to cross into healthcare, if you've gotten a life insurance policy and it's at a certain level, or you're young enough and you're getting a certain level, they send someone to your house. They run an EKG strip, they draw blood, they do height, weight, and other measurements, and they ask you some pretty interesting questions about your lifestyle because they're trying to get a more accurate understanding of whether you're insurable or not, what your premium is or not, and then they check up on you to kind of make sure that you're maintaining your end of the bargain.
That's why I smoke fake cigars here on the show.
All the time. Fake cigars.
Totally fake. It's just for show.
So I think we're gonna. Now, I could be wrong. I think we're going to start to see some of that from an insurance perspective. But, I could be wrong. Like, that might just be higher level premiums, or that might be, if you want a faster pay, like it might just be a service offering or some sort of an add-on. But no, we're definitely going to, we see people asking the questions. Now, John, I'm curious this too. A decade ago, if you tried to get, like, let's say E&O insurance, errors and omissions insurance, and you said, I do security, there was like a pause at the end of the phone. And it was, I don't think we can write for that.
Well, that pause was usually 10 years ago. John, correct me if I'm wrong, like a dial tone.
Yeah, pretty much. And the type of insurance that we got was errors and omissions, and they had nice little drop-down boxes or little circles that I could fill in bubbles. And it would be computer consulting, and I would just check that, and then I would move on.
Yep.
And I was underneath that. I think, honestly, if I would have told the insurance companies, they asked, what are you doing? It's like, well, companies are going to hire me to break into their networks. Right. 10 years ago, there's no way they would have insured me.
No. And I think, too, it depends on the amount. Like, those little boxes that John and I were checking were, and John, like 10 or 15 years ago, we were required maybe sometimes like $1 million of E&O. And that, you could probably fill out a form and just say I'm a consultant, and the insurance company like, that's cool. But then as you grow and get bigger and you deal with bigger companies, they're like, well, you need $2 million, you need $3 million, you need $5 million, you need $10 million. And then those little boxes, are a visit from a person and asking you questions, and it's a more involved process.
Well, and there's sometimes that we test customers and they say that they want us to have a specific rider. Yeah. And with most insurance companies, you can go right in and you can just you can print it out with the rider on, and it specifically calls out the customer. But over a certain amount, our insurance company starts to freak. And whenever we go to our insurance company and say, look, we need $15 million for the specific engagement, the insurance company asks two questions. The first question they ask is, what? The second question they ask is, what are you doing that's worth that much money? Mm-hmm. And a lot of customers can't answer that question. They just came up with some kind of magic number, and even though we're testing like a web server that if it goes down they may lose a few $1,000s tops, but they like those big numbers, and the insurance company says that insurance policy exceeds the entire value of the small little like online sales company. There's no way we're going to do an insurance policy for that, and that's justified. I actually like working with insurance companies more than I like working with a lot of other companies, because they come from an actuary background. Reality is what matters, and so far it's been really, really good working with them.
Yeah, and that's what I said. Like, people give it a bad rap, or everybody's got their story of how I got one over on the insurance company and they paid for this and this and this. Business insurance is different than consumer level. And our RV was broken into and everything was stolen. Half of my claim was a business claim. Half of my claim was a personal claim. Personal claim made me weep for insurance and just hate the whole industry. But the business stuff resolved quick, helped. And I find that's exactly, so, John, you already said it, this is what's going to move the needle forward in security, because guess what? They're going to ask the questions that need to be asked, because money's on the line, and they're going to go ask the question of the CFO, they're going to go ask the question of the CEO and the COO and the board, and when they don't have those answers, they're going to go get those answers. So if you want to advance yourself in the enterprise, start thinking that way. You can fight it, and that's fine. By the way, you might have ways to improve it, that's welcomed. But be conversant in that and think about, okay, how would I demonstrate that? How would I explain that? How are they going to try to prove it? And if you can get into those conversations now, even if it's just to listen and learn, then when they come and they knock on your door and they say, hey, get this thing for the insurance company, yeah, you're good. You're ready. You're able to do it. And I think you're going to see a real big difference. By the way, do you guys know the top 2 claims last year for business level insurance related to cyber?
No.
You want to take a guess?
No.
Ransomware?
It surprised me too. This was now, yeah. To be fair, I guess this is probably 2015 numbers. I was in a meeting with one of the regional heads of insurance, and he said the top 2 claims are lost laptops and insider theft of information. Employee leaves company and steals information, takes information with them. Those are
right
the
now. A lot of the products that are out there do very poorly at protecting against those 2 types of things.
Isn't that fascinating? So it's I thought that was kind of interesting, and that's where we go. Now here's the other part. A lot of people look at it and they go, well, where's the law? There isn't much, and there's for a good reason. Most people, even when they file their motions, every time these come up, I always jump on them, and I always want to see, like, oh, what are they claiming? What are they claiming is the harm? Who is in breach and why? And how's that going to work? And what are we going to do with it? And then I haven't seen one go to actual court yet. They've all been resolved out, mediated out, resolved out, arbitrated out, or just settled out, because it's not in anybody's best interest, as this is still Wild West and everybody's trying to figure it out. They don't really want a lot of settled cases on this yet. So keep that in mind. I think that's a good thing. I've got another article coming out with Sean Tuma later today or tomorrow, looking at this case in Florida, totally unrelated, but looking at compelling passwords. And everybody looked at it and said, well, that court got it wrong. I'll show everybody why the court might have actually gotten it right. And it's kind of interesting. The footnote to it is, sometimes these things take time to evolve. That's not a bad thing. If we get involved with it, we can up-level the conversations, we can draw better connections to it, and we can better understand the impacts of it, and we can act on it in a better way. That's usually how I look at these types of things.
Awesome. Closing thoughts on cyber insurance.
Get it.
Yeah, I would say if you're in the enterprise, my closing thought on it is go work with somebody who knows it better, because really what you're doing is, especially when you're trying to size your policy for the first time, there's all sorts of different things you can get that you may or may not need. And so that means you actually have to understand the risk in your organization. What risks are you actually facing that you feel confident you can mitigate against, and which ones are you worried about your potential exposure on? Can you get coverage that matches that? And then if you think about it, you're bringing together somebody who's an insurance professional, perhaps in your organization, somebody who's an insurance professional outside of your organization, either a broker or the underwriter themselves, and then hopefully you have a role in that process. If not, but that's a really interesting challenge, and there's a bunch of different jargons and lingos that happen in that, and you need a way to bring all that together. So I would say if you do that, think of it very much as a team-based approach, and that you're part of the team, not the whole team, and or get someone that can help you with it.
Awesome. John and Michael, thank you very much for coming on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. We'll see everyone next week.